Hi there, I'm Melanie Posey, Research Director for Cloud Transformation at 451 Research, a part of S&P Global Market Intelligence. My coverage areas include public cloud, private cloud, hybrid and multi-cloud architectures, managed services, and how all of this technology relates to digital transformation. Organizations are pretty far along in their journey to cloud. And one thing to keep in mind about cloud adoption is that cloud is no longer an emerging technology. It's been with us for a while, and overall, about 55% of organizations have adopted cloud technologies to some extent. One thing that we say a lot at 451 Research is that cloud is entering its teenage rampage years, where a lot of things start to happen and there's a lot of activity and I'd say drama around the adoption of cloud. One thing that's interesting when you look at this by company size is that the larger organizations, those with more than 1,000 employees, have been a little bit faster in overall adoption of cloud. However, when you look at things from the maturity perspective, you see that small and medium-sized businesses are actually more mature in their cloud usage in the sense that they've moved more of their mission-critical production applications to the cloud. So what you can say overall is that SMBs as a whole haven't moved as quickly to embrace cloud as large organizations, but those SMBs who are in the cloud right now have embraced it in a much bigger way than large enterprise organizations have. The SMBs that are in the cloud are leveraging it for the majority of their workloads and applications. So cloud brings a lot of flexibility and agility to organizations, but it also brings along complexity. So let's talk about a couple of different dimensions of complexity when it comes to cloud environment. One of these is cloud skills or lack thereof. In a recent 451 Voice of the Enterprise survey, only 15% of organizations said that they were all set in terms of cloud skills and capabilities. Everybody else recognized that there were some gaps in their cloud skill set. Compare this to about 5 years ago when we asked the same question, and then 50% of organizations said, yeah, we're all set with cloud, we're ready to go. And what's interesting there is that as you get further into the cloud landscape, as cloud becomes more and more a part of organizations' IT environments, you start to get a better sense of what you don't know. And 5 years ago, people didn't know what they didn't know. Now, here we are with 15%, only 15% of organizations saying, yes, we're all set with cloud. So one of the dimensions of complexity around cloud is that there's a continuous learning process involved. There's always a new feature, a new capability, a new functionality, or a new security situation that needs to be addressed. So in that sense, cloud is dynamic and therefore complex. Another dimension of complexity in the cloud space is quite simply the buying experience. What a lot of organizations were used to is every couple of years you buy some equipment, you put it in your data center, and it keeps going until the next refresh cycle comes along. Cloud, again, it's a continuous dynamic process. So organizations have a lot of decisions to make. What type of cloud model do they want to sign on to? Is it pay-as-you-go? Is it more of a term contract? Do you want spot instances? Do you want reserve instances? There are a lot of decisions to make and a lot of new terminology to learn, given that cloud is a different IT provisioning model, a different consumption model, and also a different buying model. One other dimension of complexity here is just the sheer number of providers there are to choose from and different types of features and capabilities that there are to choose from. Oftentimes, organizations get very paralyzed just by all the choice that is available in cloud environments. So figuring out what you need in the future to grow and expand your IT environment is a complex undertaking, and it requires a bit of a learning curve from the traditional way that IT was purchased and consumed. The cloud provider landscape is actually pretty varied, and the big hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, they're not the only game in town. There are a lot of different requirements that organizations bring to the table when they start looking at cloud services. For a large enterprise, this type of company might need a lot of bells and whistles related to security and identity and access management and additional features for things like AI, ML, IoT, et cetera, So that's going to be a different type of cloud provider selection process than you might have for another organization who's simply looking for infrastructure, compute, storage, networking, also maybe a basic platform to do cloud native development on a Kubernetes platform, and that's about the extent of the requirements. So one way to look at the cloud provider landscape is to look beyond the hyperscalers. There are a lot of providers in the cloud space who come from a heritage of web hosting. And for these providers who were well versed in the early days of hosting, when it was all about having stable infrastructure, having the option to have shared infrastructure or private infrastructure, a lot of these requirements actually have carried through to the cloud era. So one of your choices when you're looking at who to choose for cloud services, should be the hyperscalers, obviously, but there is a whole universe of alternative providers out there who maybe offer a more foundational set of services to start with. And those services might be a good place for organizations who are simply looking to migrate workloads from an on-premises environment to an off-premises environment. And having that kind of simplicity of foundational services helps to alleviate some of the skills gap issues which come into play as a dimension of complexity when moving to a cloud environment. There are different paths you can take on your journey to the cloud, and there are a lot of different types of providers that can help navigate that journey. Anytime you're making a decision, the first thing you need to do is carefully assess your current and near-term requirements. What's your objective in moving to a cloud environment? Are you looking for an agile and flexible environment for your entire IT estate, and you're essentially doing a mass migration? Or are you looking at cloud as a good environment for a workload specific or business process specific transformation? Another thing to look at is the extent to which you require open source applications and platforms like Kubernetes as part of your overall cloud environment. This is not to say that the hyperscalers have closed proprietary environments that'll lock you in, but it's a good thing to take stock of how important open is as part of your new IT platform going forward for your applications and workloads. And finally, one thing to think about also is what are the trade-offs between having a simplified IT environment from the standpoint of operational management and usability versus having a rich, diverse set of feature functionality and services on top of that core infrastructure foundation of compute, storage, and networking. Once you get a clear sense of what it is you want your cloud environment to do, then you'll have a better sense of which path to take to cloud adoption and which provider to choose in helping you along on that journey.